Hello and welcome to the TGH College Hardwood Podcast. I am Joe. With me is Greg. As always, here to talk about college basketball in the past week and then preview this week's games, I should say. Greg, how you doing?
Good, but I got a bone to pick with you. And I did not tell Joe that I was going to pick this bone with him before the podcast started.
Oh boy.
Um, but there something happened on the last podcast that you didn't acknowledge in any way, shape, or form, and we just want to give the people what they want. So when Rondo comes into the frame, you must acknowledge people. I've surveyed everyone on the planet. They all said they love dogs. Everyone,
Mm-hmm.
even people who are allergic. My wife is allergic to dogs. She loves dogs. Okay, so if Rondo pops up on your bed again, right, you have to at least that's the as much as people like looking at our faces, it's Rondo's world, and we're all just living in it.
So he does need to be on the show more, but he got up in the middle of our episode. He was not in frame, and I could not reach him without pulling my headset off. So maybe next time I'll have to just take my headset off and figure it all out. But he's now quietly resting on the bed right now as we go through our college basketball stuff. Greg, the first thing that happened last week, AJ DeBansta, the guy who people have thrown out. He's as good as LeBron James as a prospect, right? That we've heard that maybe every 5 years or so. Maybe we hear that about a prospect. That a lot of times doesn't always happen. Andrew Wiggins maybe being like one of the first ones we heard that about. He goes on to ESPN and he chooses BYU. To the surprise of many, but if you were kind of like locked into the situation, you knew BYU was going to be his pick. But to people who don't follow college basketball, Greg, everyone's like, "You going to BYU? You're considering like North Carolina. Why are you going to BYU?" And I think a lot of it comes down to they're paying him a lot of NIL money, but also because his family repeatedly says it's not about the money so much that it makes you think that like, hey, it probably is about the money because they're saying it so much. But also they have good NBA connections at BYU now, and he's playing his prep year at Utah. He's not from Utah, but he's playing a prep year there. So it seems like maybe he had this in mind for a while.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think this happens without the money and without Kevin Young being at. Like, I feel like when Kevin Young got hired by BYU, everybody was kind of like, okay, like BYU's taking basketball seriously. Like, we're gonna hire a guy off an NBA bench, and like that, along with the money, is gonna attract talent. Like, there's not really, I don't know where he. So you said he's playing his prep year in Utah right now, but like he doesn't have any local connection other than that, right? Like this,
I'm pretty
like
sure,
he
yeah.
didn't play. So like this wasn't one of those things where it's like, people were throwing out the hey, Cooper Flag should play for Maine because he's from Maine. Like this is not like that type. Like yeah, he's happening like to, and I'm curious how like the I'm assuming like when they put his stuff on the roster or his bio or whatever, it's not going to say he's from Utah. It's
No,
going to
no.
say he's from wherever else, even though his last school will be, Utah, whatever. I mean, like I think the coach has a big thing to do with it, but the rumored like $10 million or whatever it's going to be, it probably has a lot more to do with it. And I remember, Joe, you had mentioned, I can't remember if you said it on the podcast or if we said it offline somewhere, but like you had mentioned that Devonta was a prospect that like it sounded like there was like a bidding war going on, and some schools were like, I'm good. We're just going to pull out for we don't want anything to do with that.
There are a lot of recruiting battles that are going like that for different players. I think we talked about Jaden Quaintance, the guy who's now at Arizona State. He was the guy where I think even like Kentucky and Arkansas at one point were in on him, and now like went to Arizona State because that was a place that could either afford him or he like kind of the other programs got kind of mad and were like, hey, we're just done negotiating at this point. So it's going to happen more and more. For this particular, I think this is not going to be a hey, this is like hey, BYU is going to be like an NBA funnel in the terms of like it's not going to be like Kentucky was with John Calipari and all that stuff. They're going to get one or two key players every draft or every recruiting class, and it's going to work out. We know they have Denham right now. Their guy who's going to be a lottery pick. He's been playing well. We need to watch some more big BYU basketball. We're going to get to a lot of good BYU games in the Big 12. And then next year they have DeBansta. I don't think they're going to like be Like I kind of like this because it's like not one of the name brand schools, but it's not like a random school like you said with Cooper Flag in Maine. Like that would be totally random. This is like they have some history there, but like could help take them to new heights. So I'm excited to see what's going to come of it, Greg. But it also is a new world where I think in the last 5-6 years we've seen so many misses with the top recruiting classes. That it's just more of a team game. It's more of a can you shoot the three, and a lot of the individual performances we see are nice, but a lot of times sometimes it's on teams where like one of the best players in college basketball right now, Greg, is Eric Dixon, averaging like 26 points a game or something like that, and on a team that is playing well right now. Kyle Epton's probably saved his job for a little bit here. Knock on wood for him, but like it's more of a team game and more of a team sport than I think it ever has been. So we will see how this all works out for BYU. Excited to see how that works out in the future and to see possible future NIL negotiations with some of these prospects coming up. Greg, let's get to our recap of last week. We're going to start with Tuesday. On this night, Arkansas also beat Michigan 89-87 in a pretty big game. Michigan's been playing pretty fantastic. Arkansas up and down. So just something to note as we move forward with the college basketball season of two teams that could be a factor, but we do not need to recap too much. Let's start off with Illinois beating Wisconsin at home. Illinois, better season I think I expected out of them, and I think I jumped on the bandwagon early with Kasparis, but he played pretty well in this game. He's leading the charge, and I think obviously another lottery pick. We talked about how some of these guys could kind of lead the way. He had 24 points, 6 rebounds, 5 assists in this one, and we talked about it a little bit last week on our show, Greg, but maybe Wisconsin being a little bit overrated is I think, more of the thing I get from this. Like, I said last week Illinois might have the highest ceiling of any team in the Big Ten, and I still kind of believe that, even after results of the weekend and everything. Maybe even more so because of the results of the weekend, to be honest. But Wisconsin is a team that I think that we got a little bit high on because of the wins that we mentioned last week, Greg, that look good at the time but aren't so good anymore.
Yeah, I mean, like the only thing I'll give them is like this is a game they hold close at Illinois, and as we've seen, you know, hanging in a game on the road is as close to a moral victory as you can get. Illinois, besides being the all-name team, if we're talking about their front court, because I'm sure guys that are this game was on Peacock, and I'm sure that those guys that were calling that game had fun trying to. All right, so you mean we're have to not their front well, Humerkus and Visic, and then you got Jakusionis in the backcourt, but all name team right there. I didn't realize how good Wisconsin's defense was, and I know an 86-80 score might not feel like that, but I watched it. I did go back and watch it. I didn't watch it live, but I did go back and watch this game. I still am not sold on like Illinois as like a Big Ten. It's weird to say because we know there's not like a lot of elite teams in the Big Ten, but I'm still not sold on Illinois as like a Big Ten title contender or one of our top 2-ish teams. But I could see them getting there. They have some nice pieces. Outside of Jakusionis, I just don't know what you can rely on right now. I mean, Trey White, journeyman, been to however many schools at this point. He's playing nice. Kylan Boswell's had some athletic and strong finishes in this game, but I still just have this like wariness around them. I know you had said in the preseason, maybe I'm making this up. I thought you had said something like you were lower than most people were on them. And I think this team has a lot of room to grow. They're going to find out quite a bit once that this is obviously Big Ten play for them, but when they get to the heart of Big Ten play and it's a Big Ten team every night, I think they're going to find out a lot. Wisconsin, if anything, inconsistent. Like I don't know what to make of them because it's like, Tanji has the big night where he puts up 40 and then like we turn back around and it's, you start looking at, all right, well, the biggest win was Arizona, and like Arizona, I feel like it's, we're saying the same thing about them every time we pick one of their games every week. I don't know. They might just kind of be worth putting on the back burner for at least a couple of weeks until, something changes.
I don't think it's a bad strategy whatsoever. You were right. I said I was lower on Illinois. Quickly changed pace early this season and saying like that I kind of like what they're doing. I think with the Big Ten being wide open, I could actually see them winning it, even as currently constructed. And this is like one of those things where I think we just have to like with college basketball be kind of go into things saying like, hey, this is what we currently think of the rosters, but we have no freaking idea how they're going to fit. We have no idea what's going to happen. So it's best to watch basketball and kind of adjust your opinions as you go along. So as mentioned, like Arizona has talent on their team. They're not playing up to that talent level right now. They have a lot of inefficient play. It's a little bit different. It's like how things fit. I do like how this Illinois team fits. This game they win without even getting a huge contribution from Will Riley. He's coming off the bench, but a very good player for them. He had 5 points in this one. So I'm excited to see what they do. They do have a game on the 22nd, which is Sunday, I believe, against Missouri. We do not have this on our pick sheet, but I'm just going to hint here. It's going to be Illinois for me. All right, let's go to Saturday games. Greg, we mentioned that it was a lot of finals last week, so that kind of prevented a lot of weekday games going on, but there was a very big Saturday of college basketball, possibly one of the biggest days of the year so far. And let's start off with the early game. We have Texas A&M beating Purdue. This is 70-66. Now, from the vibe I got of this game, Greg, for me, this is one of the ones where I think that physical play of Buzz Williams kind of came into account here. They forced 16 turnovers by Purdue. We talked about, how the guards can't always handle pressure. And this is like I think the second big game in a row that Trey Kaufman-Renn had 5 turnovers too. So they got to figure that out as well for a guy who's dominant in the paint at times. He's got to figure that part of things out. And also I think we have Wade Taylor having more help this year than he did last year in terms of there's a couple other guys who score the ball besides just him and Tyrese Radford. So that's really good. And just throwing bodies like they do, we mention this all the time, Greg. It's very frustrating to watch. I think Henry Coleman is a very good player. He played 12 minutes and scored 3 points in this one. But they keep on throwing big bodies in there. And if you're going to play a team that has like Trey Kaufman-Renn or say they had Zach Edey from last year, this is the team that could beat Purdue last year in a one-off game because they could just throw those bodies out there and they can force those turnovers. So one of those that I think I'm not sure Texas A&M is a better team than Purdue overall. I'm not sure Purdue's better than Texas A&M, but I do think the styles dictated the play in this one more than anything.
Yeah, I mean, just kind of like you said, they at some point Trey Kaufman-Renn is one guy, and their backup, big man is going to be like Wilberg, and he started games early in the year, and now he's kind of been reduced significantly in his role. Well, I mean, if Kaufman-Renn plays so many minutes and he's got, Pharrell Payne on him 1 second and then he's got Henry Coleman on him another second. And then, it's just you just keep throwing and not just his individual matchups, but this intense, pressure that the Texas A&M defense plays both on ball and in the post. I mean, in the first half, especially, you noticed if you watch this game, they're doubling Kaufman-Renn every time he touches the ball, near the block, and it's making him make choices. And that's where, his turnovers come in. Mm-hmm. The only thing I want to say about that was it seemed like late in the game, Purdue kind of figured out schematically, hey, if we elevate our offense up a little bit, move our wings and whatnot up, that over the top or that long bounce pass was there, and then there was no help behind. I don't know why it took them all game to figure that out. I mean, Kaufman-Renn, I don't think he had a bucket in the first half, at least a field goal. I think he may have had a free throw or two. It just kind of baffles me sometimes when you figure something like that out, with 5 minutes to go in the game. And they darn near came back. I mean, it was never. I think the largest lead Texas A&M had in this game was 8 or something. It was never oh my goodness, they're running away with it, but they had pretty commanding control of this game. It was the defense, the rebounding. I mean, how many times did and they said it on the broadcast. Texas A&M's philosophy at times, we talk about how Wade Taylor is not the most efficient at times, and their philosophy, they said, hey, it's throw it up, near the bucket, and one of our offensive, one of our big bodies will go get it and put it in for you. But not just that. Like obviously Wade Taylor, he made some deep shots. Um, they passed the ball really well. I mean, like the Purdue defense is going to need, they're going to need some work. I feel like we've said that in years past too. It's just they don't really have that kind of rim protector that they had in the past. So um, I'm not like I think this is a good game for both teams. Like obviously, if you're Purdue and the game's played in Indianapolis, you want to come away with the win, but they didn't fold against a team that has tremendous pressure. And as Joe has pointed out, like yeah, they turned the ball over a lot, and I think they said like 6 times on the broadcast, like, "Hey, here's the difference in Purdue's wins versus losses. You know how much they turned the ball over." But they didn't completely fold against a team that plays intense defensive pressure. Um, we'll talk about one of their matchups coming up this weekend that I think is going to be really interesting, but won't get ahead of us. Um, as far as like where can both of these teams go, I still think like I even though they lost this game, I still think Purdue is maybe a little bit better than I thought they were coming into this year. But I definitely think Texas A&M is better than I thought they were coming into this year. Like they've definitely moved up a notch on my not just because of this particular game, but just seeing their progression and seeing the emergence of Zurich Phelps and just they've got other dudes that can help Wade Taylor out.
Yeah, definitely higher on them too since the start of the season. Purdue, I'm not sure I'm higher on. I feel like there's been a mixed bag of results. Like you go beat Alabama, you lose to Marquette, you beat Ole Miss, then you lose to Penn State, you beat Maryland, who I think is better than people realize so far this season, and then you lose to Texas A&M. Now you got a big game we're gonna talk about this weekend, and then you go into Big Ten play where maybe you get some easy matchups, but it's hard. I think the key here is going to be hard to gauge how big their wins in the Big Ten are because I think there's so little we know about how good these teams are in the Big Ten. There is very good depth in the league where you could lose a game on the road and it'd be like not the end of the world. But that's going to be the hard part is gauging how good this team is. If we're talking, I think I had them ranked like 11th preseason. I think they're pretty far away from that personally, but the good news for them is that a lot of teams are playing like that. We're having these kind of weird results. So that's for me something to watch out for in the future here. Let's move on, Greg, to the Xavier Cincinnati game, the Crosstown Shootout. This one was at UC, and quite possibly, as it usually is in these Crosstown Shootouts, one of the ugliest games of all time you're ever going to see. There was a lot of missed shots. We had Jizzle James go 0 of 11 from the floor. Zach Freemantle 6 of 16 to kind of show some fairness on both sides there. A lot of missed shots, physicality. UC comes away with the win in this one, Greg. One where the game was close down the stretch. Xavier's turnovers killed them. There was not a lot of good shooting in this game. UC shot 25% from three, but they were able to get good looks near the basket. Xavier, on the other hand, attempted to shoot the three better than they have in years past. They shot 31%. And now, after the game, you lose Zach Freemantle for the rest of the year. Possibly, is the rumor right now. But definitely out indefinitely. And going to be a tough road ahead because they've already lost players to injury this year. They're going to be very short. There was a team that maybe we thought would have an 11-man kind of figure it out who's in the rotation. Now they're down to about 8 for the foreseeable future. We'll update everyone on how Zach Fremantle's injury might come into affect things, but just a lot of bad news for Xavier. We already talked about the Big East being down, so it could be a really rough year all around.
Yeah, that's my big picture take on this. Like this individual game, like props to UC. Won the game. Good environment. ESPN Plus sucks. That was going around Twitter a lot. I rewatched this game. I wasn't able to watch it live just because the team I coach, we had a game around the same time. And rewatching it on ESPN Plus on demand was a treat. I say sarcastically. So if the Big 12 could get that junk figured out, that would be appreciated. Joe already mentioned the Fremantle news. I mean, Trey Green, they announced this week that he's away from the team indefinitely. It just the sounds like the nature of it is mental health of some sort. That's speculation. I don't know for sure, but that's just kind of the vibe I get from the way things were worded. Lucina Traore was already out at the beginning before the season even started. I mean, like very thin team. This is going to be one of those situations where I know you said we're already down, around like the kind of the 8-player mark. Like if we just assume Fremantle is done for the season or at least an extended period of time, like the only way this team's making the tournament is if somebody steps up into a role that they were not expecting to have, and that probably looks like John Hugley. Like, or can you tell me how? Like, I've heard his name pronounced like 3 different ways. So, like, can you tell me how we're supposed to pronounce it? Because I went to the school and I've heard it said 3 different. Like, I feel like I should know my own school's whatever. But like, that's the position that they're thinnest at. I mean, like, they could play Hunter, a 4 or small ball 5, so like they can get away with that. But without hugely or Hugley having a huge impact that he wasn't otherwise thought to have had. Like, I'm sure he was supposed to be a rotation player. Like, there's no doubt about that. But like, unless they're going to start small, like he's probably their starting 5 now, right? Like, I mean, that's a role I cannot imagine he was anywhere near expecting. I mean, like, these guards can play great, and if you get to March, like we always talk about, like the guards are kind of what dominate the game, but kind of the in and out, the day to day, especially in the Big East, like you're going to need some interior presence. Like, your guards are going to have off night shooting. You're going to need defense. You're going to need rebounding. You're going to need to score in the paint. Like, I obviously have hope, but it's very dim right now.
Yeah, Hugley's going to have to step up, that's for sure. I would say that maybe they start with Hunter as the small ball 5, and if teams like UConn come in who have bigs, and surprise, surprise, UConn plays Xavier this week, has bigs that maybe can take advantage of that, maybe you put Hugley in to start. But I think at this point, your only hope is to play as fast a pace as possible, have Hunter at the 5, shoot a lot of threes. I think Davion McKnight has done a very good job running the point for this team and just setting up all these shooters. They need Maddox, the transfer from Toledo, to step his game up. He has been kind of a disappointment so far this year. And this might change some other plans they have too. I don't know how it's all going to come to be, but if Fremantle's out for an extended period of time or the whole season, it might mean other guys get activated. Trey Green, we don't know when he's coming back. So like, Roddy Anderson transfers in from Boise State. He started on an NCAA tournament team last year. Supposed to redshirt this whole year and kind of be that guard next year for this team to take over for Davion McKnight. They might say, hey, that redshirt, that's gone. You're playing, buddy. And he might be okay with it. He might not be, but we'll see what happens there. And then also Cameron Fletcher, the transfer who started his career at Kentucky, then went to Florida State. He's 6'6", so he's not like a big guy, but he could be a guy who could be a small ball 5 as well, or a 4. A guy who I think they were going to try to redshirt to kind of let him come back from his injury. I don't know what's going to go on with that. I don't even know officially what the statement would be there, but we'll see what that changes for Xavier down the stretch. The only good news might be, in a way, if they can just kind of tread water in the Big East. It looks like that's something that might be possible with how bad the rest of the Big East is, but they started off about as brutally as you can ask with games against UConn and Marquette this week. That's going to be a tough way to start things. They have to settle down after that point, probably. Next game up, Greg, we have Louisville at Kentucky. Kentucky wins this one by 8 points. Now, the stories of this game, I think, come down to Louisville not having the depth. We talked about some of the injuries they had last week. They only played 7 players in this one. That probably played a huge factor in this one. And then Kentucky, Lamont Butler does not miss from the field. 10 of 10 from the floor, 6 of 6 from 3, 33 points overall. This Kentucky team is a lot of fun to watch because you just don't know which player is going to have his big game on whatever night. In a way that is scary, we are attached to watching these March moments or seeing these big stars have these March moments and kind of lead these teams to victory. It's not often you see teams who they share the ball. You never know who's going to step up every night. So in a way, it's good and fun to watch basketball. In another way, it's kind of scary as a fan of Kentucky is like, hey, if we need a bucket, who are we going to? But they get the win. There was a little bit of a scuffle, as you see in rivalry games, but I think this is more about Kentucky took care of business in the rivalry game. Louisville has some injuries, and I don't think even if they didn't have the injuries, I just don't think this is exactly where Pat Kelsey wants the roster to be. We talked about Chucky Hepburn did have 26 points in this one, but I still think if he's your leading scorer, you have bigger problems than that.
I mean, Louisville only played 7 guys in this game. Like, I feel like end of season rotation, like you'll sometimes see coaches slim down, but even then, like I feel like you hardly ever see a coach at any time go down. Like 7 is that's short. Like I feel like 8 is probably that perfect number, especially late in season. Um, it just stinks. I mean, we mentioned it last week when we talked about Louisville when we were previewing this game. They've had some unfortunate injury things, but I mean, obviously they're better than they were last year. Like last year's team would have not hung with this UK team in any way, shape, or form. So on the UK side, I mean, like can't say anything else about Lamont Butler. I mean, had perfect I guess a perfect passer rating or whatever rating you want to give him. He's literally didn't miss. I guess you can get mad at him for 3 turnovers. I don't know, is what it is. But like it wasn't just him. Like you had a really efficient night from Otega Owe as well. Like it, there's a lot to this team. 4 of the 5 starters, in double figures. Like yes, it was the Lamont Butler game, but it wasn't, like Kobe 81, like he's the only one doing anything. There was help. And like nothing really sticks out to me as like, an eyesore or anything like that worries me. I mean, like we the only thing is like maybe Kobe Brea's shooting's coming down to earth a little bit, but I don't think we expected him to shoot like 60% from 3 for the whole season. That's not human. Like maybe in practice with no one guarding him, but in a game, like just the expectation, at least for me, was not for I think he finished it last year at like what 51 or 52%. I thought he just edged over the 50% mark, which was ridiculous still, but he was doing better than that this year. So I mean, like this Kentucky team's good. It was a good win. Always good rivalry game to win. Sky's the limit. As Michael Jordan would say, the ceiling is the roof. So
hate that you used that North Carolina line about this Kentucky team, but here we are. 49.8% for him last year. He is at 53.1 this year, Greg, for Kobe Brea. He was, I think, before the last week, like 61%. Just absolutely torching things. In the same way we talked about Xavier, I think we need to talk about Louisville. I think this is going to be a sign about how you build your rosters a little bit, too. Like, Xavier didn't have a choice. They have one guy they're redshirting, but, like, he's also a guard. The guys, their injuries are on the front court. Louisville, remember, they took on Ali Khalifa from BYU, Mark Pope's team, actually, coincidentally. They also have Noah Waterman from BYU, also Mark Pope, formerly coached theirs, right? So that's crazy that they have those guys on the roster. But Ali Khalifa is redshirting this year and kind of like did offseason surgery. So like one of those, do you bring him back and try to force the issue? Is he okay with that? Is everyone going to use their 13th scholarship on a guy who's going to redshirt? Are they going to try to get other guys into this rotation? There's a lot of questions. These are 2 teams, I think, that are very similar in the injuries they've had. And I think there's a lot of questions about how you build your roster. And I don't know, I guess if you're going to have injuries, how you handle that moving forward. Next game up, Greg, we have a buzzer beater. Tennessee beats Illinois 66-64. Gainey has a buzzer beater to win it for Tennessee, a guy who had 23 points on the night. Not the most efficient night for him, 6 of 14 shooting, but you know what? I think he'll take the win and the buzzer beater there. Mentioned earlier, or last week, Greg, that Tennessee was just blowing teams out. This is a true road game, though, but they get the win, and that's what matters the most. I came away pretty impressed with both sides because Tennessee getting that tough road win, staying undefeated, finding ways to win with guys like Jordan Gainey off the bench stepping up, playing 34 minutes off the bench, and also having Illinois come into this game, and man, Kasparas just steps up every single game. It's incredible to watch this guy play. Did not have the most efficient night shooting, but kept people involved, scored 22 points. The 7 turnovers are going to get you, but I think when you have guys like Zakai Ziegler on the other side, this is a learning experience for him, and only thing he's going to do is get better.
Yeah, the big thing for me with Tennessee, Chad Lanier fouled out with, I can't remember what, 5-6 minutes left, and then like right before this play, Zakai Ziegler fouls out. Like it was topsy-turvy roller coaster. Like, I if you're Rick Barnes, you got to be breathing a sigh of relief because like you're not wanting that game to go to overtime. Like, thank goodness no one picked up Jordan Gainey. Just was able to just get all the way to the bucket with very little resistance. But I don't like the look of it if this game goes to overtime. It's at home, for Illinois. Like, missing 2 of your 5 starters as Tennessee. Like, be happy you got it done, because I would bet a large, although I lost, most of the bets I placed this weekend. But if I was a betting man and this game went to overtime, it would have put a large sum of money on Illinois. Still all right with them. Like, this is probably a little bit different than a lot of the teams that they've faced this year. A little bit of a different look. Jakusionis still gets his stuff done. Again, not as efficient, but that's going to happen when you play a team like Tennessee. I mean, this didn't change. This didn't change my perspective, like my thoughts on Illinois. Like, okay, you stayed with this team. I don't necessarily yes, Tennessee is the number 1 team in the country in the AP poll, but maybe you disagree, but I feel like neither, we probably don't think they're actually the best team in the country. They just are recipients of that AP poll voters, just kind of move them on up because they haven't lost, kind of thing. Yep. The conversation of who's the best team in the country, it's for another day. I don't know. I think that's it. I think that's all I got on this game.
Yeah, definitely some of that factor coming in of who has the undefeated record still coming into play. And even if they are the number 1 team, I think it's a year where we don't really have a number 1 team or we're really confident in as being the best team in the country whenever it happens. So we will see how Tennessee progresses from here. Greg, let's move on to the game you went to, Marquette and Dayton. And Greg Leck, quote last week, Dayton is not winning this game. So there you go. That's the end of that one. Dayton didn't win the game, but no, they did win the game 71-63. This is a big win for Dayton in a couple different regards. I'm going to start real quick, Greg, before I hand it over to you since you were at the game. One, something you mentioned, they didn't hit a lot of threes. That is huge to beat a team like this. Marquette. It's a big win because you don't get to play a lot of these teams at home all the time. Another reason there. And also, I think showing me that you can slow down Cam Jones. Now, he finished with 18 points, but it was on 6 of 13 shooting. And for a guy who can go off and probably better than anyone on Dayton's team, that is a very, very good sign. And the last reason this is big for Dayton, so they're 9-2, looking good for an at-large bid now. But this is there are 2 losses so far: North Carolina, Iowa State. Understandable. They beat UConn, which is going to look better and better as time goes on. Their last little adventure before going to A10 play is UNLV and Cincinnati this week. So big week for them. They got to make sure that they stay emotionally ready for those games and not just kind of start getting high on their own supply. But also puts them in a good spot for possibly an at-large bid, possibly getting more than one team in the tournament from the A10. Greg, take it away. I know you got a lot to say about this one because you were there, and it seemed like a fun game to be at.
It was a fun game to be at. My wife, when the game ended, she was aware that I not only bet on Marquette pregame, but live bet plus 230 Marquette because I thought it was easy money. And she turned around. She said, "Haha, that's what you get." And I was like, "It's your money too." So I guess sticking it to yourself a little bit, but hey, it is what it is. Couple of notes, actually from the game. Dayton had how many maybe you saw it, maybe you didn't. Do you know how many turnovers they had in the second half?
I do not know. There you go.
That's a pretty damn good factor. I mean, in an ordinary game, that's a good factor. Playing against a Marquette defense, holy cow! I will if you'd have told me that, I don't even know what my reaction would have been. I just would have told you you're nuts. A couple other actual in-game notes. My shout out to my brother-in-law who reminded us all that Javon Bennett led the country in steals 2 years ago before he transferred to UD. Mm-hmm. And there was him and Cheeks finished this game with 3 steals, and they came at what felt like crucial, critical swing points in the game. It was there was points in this game where Marquette got to pretty big leads, and then there was like I think 2 separate times where Dayton scored and then Bennett stole the inbound pass from Marquette and put a layup in, or they ended up scoring on the possession that ensued. I know there was specifically one that he scored, got the steal, and scored again, and it was like obviously that's a pretty quick swing. Joe already talked about a couple like high level points, but the one thing I did look at today, and I just happened to be looking, I wasn't looking for this, but I was on KenPom and I noticed that Dayton is 10th in offensive efficiency right now. And if you look at like where they've been since the pandemic, nowhere close to that. So last year they finished 24th. And the previous years it was, I think, like 68th, 72nd, and like 89th on offense efficiency. Usually we're sitting here talking about this team and we're like, man, the defense is great, but Anthony Grant just can't coach offense. Well, here we are. You know, it's the opposite this year. You know, and I do feel like we're seeing some of that on the court, but kind of at the cost of the defense. They don't have, like they have some dudes that are tall, like Emil Latong, but he's just not going to that he's tall and lanky, but he's not going to provide a lot of rim protection. He's just not. That's just not how he plays the game. Zed Key, dunk merchant, great, but not like, maybe he can be, but he's just not been the most intimidating. So some of this defensive stuff, I'm hoping and we can rely on Anthony Grant because that's been the one thing that they've had going for him the last couple of years. But, I said when they walked out of Maui, I was like, this team should win the A-10, no problem. And, there have been some developments, like teams that we didn't think were going to be good, like St. Bonaventure picked up a good win this weekend. Rhode Island beat Providence. Like there's been a couple of things that have happened. It makes me think maybe the A-10 is going to be a little bit better than I thought, but like this team, darn near beat Carolina, darn near beat Iowa State. They beat UConn, who looks like they're on the upswing. I don't care that it's at home. I will take a win over Marquette any day of the week. I mean, like, this team is probably looking at, what do you think? Like, the tournament started today. They have to be at least a 6 seed right now. Like, maybe even 5 seed territory. They have the potential with how good they've played at times. This team probably has the potential to be maybe as high as a 4 seed. I don't think they can get much higher than that just because, like, in conference, it's like there's not going to be a lot more giant opportunities. Like, there'll be some good ones, but there's not – they pretty much have the UC game at UC. Or I'm sorry, it's not at UC. It's a neutral site at Heritage Bank Arena or whatever it's called now. It used to be US Bank, but we're going to that game, so that's the biggest thing that they got left. Hopefully, like you said, they don't overlook Tuesday, and we'll be at Tuesday's game as well. So we saw some of the players. Rachel was looking at their Instagram live after the game, and like it does make you wonder, like, is there going to be a little bit of a hangover effect, going into Tuesday, and just have to keep an eye on it. So
yeah, this one, it's the neutral site in Cincinnati, but it also, like, okay, there's going to be like 50-50 Dayton fans there. You can call that one a neutral site, I think.
It was when we went to this game. Was it 2 years ago? Was it last?
I think last year. Yeah.
We went to the last year's one, and it was pretty close to 50. If not, it might have been 55-45.
Yeah.
UD, but I think with where UC's program is at, I would expect a pretty even split this year.
Yeah. Maybe even 55-45 UC, just because they're good. They just come off that win over Xavier, and we'll see how it goes. But they would be probably probably a 6 or 7 seed right now if you had to end things. They're 23rd in the net, 2-2 in quad 1, undefeated, and then the rest of the quadrants. I think the difference here, Greg, that offensive efficiency is coming because of Malachi Smith. 11 assists in this game, and a guy who last year goes down, and the efficiency maybe not as good as it should be, but just kind of makes you wonder what would happen if they had their star guard along with their star big man in Holmes, who's now no longer there, obviously. But I will say that I think the other thing too is the defense doesn't show up in the stats as much as it should. They're 65th in Ken Palm, I think, around there defensively this year, and I know we can't do this, but they play North Carolina and Iowa State. Take those two games out because that's those two teams that I think are very very tough in the first games in Maui. But other than that, they have not allowed 70 points in a game this season. And that's impressive when you consider they just played Marquette. They just, they played UConn a couple weeks ago. So excited for that. I mentioned they made it really tough for Cam Jones. If they can do stuff like that for other teams, like, yes, they're capable of beating Cincinnati this week. And then the bad news for the NCAA tournament resume is it's likely all downhill from there because you're playing in a situation as the big dogs in the conference where any loss you take is going to probably be one that is not expected. Whereas if you're in a bigger conference, you can take losses here and there and still have quadrant one opportunities. We'll see how the A10 shakes out though. So big win for Dayton. Marquette, we'll see how they're able to bounce back here in a little bit. The last game we're going to recap, Greg. UConn is back. UConn is back 100%. They beat Gonzaga 77-71. This is, I think, the statement of Dan Hurley this year. Hey, this is Liam McNeely's team. He's a freshman. He's stepping up. He continues to play well. He continues to play hard, diving on the floor for loose balls. 26 points in this one. No other starter entered double figures. There is, with Gonzaga, I would say some problems with turnovers in this one, specifically Graham Ike. And maybe, I would say not getting exactly what you thought you were going to get from certain people. Like Nolan Hickman had 0 points. Graham Ike only had 3 in this one. And they only played 12 minutes each in this one, too. So this is a loss that I think Gonzaga, in 2 months we're not going to be talking about very much, so it's okay. But definitely some issues with Gonzaga moving forward, whereas UConn, it seems like their tide has totally changed. I mentioned, Greg, we're going to start seeing those stats come out of they haven't lost on the mainland in how many days. They're just going to omit the Maui Invitational. But 3 losses all in Maui, otherwise undefeated. Some big wins over Baylor, Texas, Gonzaga, back to back to back. Have to have you feeling good about UConn.
If I was going to play devil's advocate, okay, I'm with you. I don't want to put this out into the universe and give Dan Hurley more material to work with. But if I was going to play devil's advocate, I'd be like, well, is Baylor really that good? All right, they won. They beat Texas at Texas, but, how good are they? All right, Gonzaga's lost to West Virginia this year, and it was at MSG. I think they're good, and, obviously they had some stuff to figure out. Again, it cannot be easy to 3 straight years a few returning pieces, but win a title, essentially new roster, win a title, essentially new roster. It just there's so much that changes year to year. It's not like their entire roster, and it's not like the entire roster is turning over, but giant pieces, the entire team identity is changing for sure. So, there's some growth to that. And if you look at the teams they lost to, all right, Memphis might have been a little bit better than we thought. Dayton obviously might be a little bit better than we thought when they played that game. I mean, the Colorado one might just be the shock value of, holy cow, we just lost to Memphis the day before. They got nothing but Big East games coming up. So, I mean, if we all of a sudden look up and they finish the year with 3 or 4 losses, okay, so this is kind of where the ultimate point I was leading up to. Let's just say they go undefeated in Big East play. Are you going to pick them to? Again, there'll be other circumstances. It depends on what happens around the rest of the country, but I don't know that it's going to be even if they go undefeated in Big East play. I don't know that it's going to be surefire for me. Yep, I'm picking them to win my tournament, because it's all right, their marquee wins are Baylor, Texas, Gonzaga, and I guess it'll be Marquette and her injured Creighton team, an ailing Providence team. I don't know. I mean, maybe you disagree. Hey, if a team goes undefeated in in a power conference, but this is the Big East, and it's way down. and it's only getting more down with some of the injuries that are seeing. I don't know. What are your thoughts?
I would not pick them. Yeah, not to go against the Hurley family, but I think that this is a team that is still pretty flawed. They're figuring it out, and I think they're going to be very good. But if you're talking about winning Big East tournament or even winning the NCAA tournament this year, I really like Hassan Diarra. I like the way he plays. He sets up his teammates. He's obviously doesn't shoot the ball that well, but I think he does a very good job knowing what he is, and that is good. I like Liam McNeely and I like Alex Caravan. I wonder if they have enough scoring punch from guards to win it all. They have had that in the past. Whether they needed Tristan Newton to get a bucket, they could count on him. Whether it was Jordan Hawkins a couple years ago, they had that. But Solo Ball's playing okay, 12.5 points. Terrace Reed's playing okay, 11.1 points. I would like to see games where they step up big time. I'd like to see Aiden Mahaney develop possibly, because that is still one of the biggest head scratchers we've seen. If a guy I thought was going to have a big impact and just not this year. So there's a lot that I think still needs to be figured out. I don't think it's about the wins they're having. I do think the wins they're having are impressive. Like, even if we say, oh, well, Baylor wins a little bit less impressive, or the Texas wins a little bit less impressive, or the Gonzaga wins a little bit less impressive, it is still beating three solid teams in some fashion back to back to back. So I think I'm not down on them because of, or excuse me, I'm not up on them because of the wins. More so, I think it's just how they're playing, but I still see those holes, if that makes sense. So that's where I'm at with them, Greg. I don't know. Did you answer the question? I don't think you answered it yourself.
No, I'm leaning, and I don't know if that sounds crazy. Where I'm leaning is even if they go undefeated in the Big East. I'm not saying I wouldn't. I'm just saying they're not like that. Wouldn't make them for me my surefire. I'm picking them to win the tournament like I did last year. Like last year, I was like I'm picking them to win the tournament. I'm just not sure with what's left on their schedule, unless I guess if they win every game by 25 points and it's like impossible to ignore, but I can't imagine it's going to be like that. Mm-hmm. I'm not saying they can't three-peat. I'm not saying it won't happen. I'm just saying, like, with a down Big East, I'm not sure that, like, even a steamroll of the league is enough for me to say, yes, this is the same situation it was last year, just with a different cast. They're winning the title. Period. Amen. Again, unless we look up and they're beating Marquette at Marquette by 45 or something stupid like that, where it's like, all right, maybe they did figure something out. I don't think the narrative, the script is going to be the same. If they win the title, it's going to be more like, I think, not as an underdog. I don't think it's that, but like, not as like your outright favorite to win it going into the tournament, which kind of feels like it was the first time they won the title in 22. Mm-hmm. Or 20, not 20. 22 is 23. Kansas.
Yeah,
23.
Yeah, 23 was one where they weren't expected to win it all, and they did.
They're three seed that year, right?
I think they were 3 or 4.
4?
So I think 4. They were 4. And then last year, obviously, everyone and their grandmother picked UConn to win the NCAA tournament last year in their bracket.
Who won our bracket challenge with our friends?
That was you.
Oh, that's right. I forgot. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Did you have UConn winning it?
Yeah. I wouldn't ask that for no reason.
Okay. Yeah. There you go. I decided to be different and take Creighton, but my love of Baylor Scheierman and the way he played did not work out for me. But yeah,
I didn't hate that pick at the time either.
No, it's just everyone. If you want to win your bracket pools, like, yes, a lot of times the obvious team wins, but this is a sport where the best team doesn't always win. It's just how it goes. I mean, if you have a Kentucky 2012, they won the championship. That was the best team all year. We have a lot of years where, like, even UConn the first year, that probably not the best team in college basketball that year, but they got it hot when they needed to.
Beyond that, like, if Creighton made the title game, it probably didn't matter what else happened. Just the value alone that you were getting from that probably would have been enough for you to, like, I think we talked about that last year when we did our tournament. Like, sometimes you kind of got to look for a little bit of, like, what might be more valuable. And we don't need, it's December. We don't need to get into this right now, but because otherwise what ends up making or breaking who wins the bracket pool is like who picked the round of 32 games, most cracked.
Right, because if everyone picks the same champion, which a lot of times, to be honest, a lot of these bracket pools, people have 2 or 3 champions most years, and we'll go through. I'll write the article when it gets to March about the teams who can win it. There's a list of about 7 or 8 teams in every tournament that could win it based on the metrics, and we can flesh that out. But there's different strategies of how you can pick different champions and not have to have the same 1 or 2 in every single bracket. But that's how it goes.
Technically, there's only 12 options. What is so Joe sent me this week, or did you send me that last week?
Oh yeah, the top 12.
The top. It's always been a winner. The title winner has always been top 12 team. Coming is the week 6 poll.
I think so. Yeah.
Okay. So notably, UConn was not in the top 12 for that poll. So there you go.
Mm-hmm.
If you've got a futures bet on UConn and you can cash it out, we already know it's not going to happen, right? I mean, I guess if there was anybody that was going to break the curve, how many years running is this thing?
I have no idea. I saw the stat. It's one of those this is just a stupid stat that somehow ends up being true.
Right,
it's not like the Ken Palm thing we do at the end of the season. It's just, hey, week 5, week 6, the team's top 12.
If you think about it for just top down, all right. So it's not the preseason, so it's not like the before the season starts expectations. It's like 5 to 6 weeks in where teams have kind of maybe leveled out a little bit. It's right before conference play. Maybe some of the major injury news has come out. I would think it would be whatever this thing would be more like, all right, the week 15 or whatever. But for whatever reason, it's been the week 6 AP poll. The winner has come from one of the top 12. Who knows?
I mean,
maybe this year it won't happen, but
you could look at it differently. Maybe people can use that to eliminate teams. But if you gave me or you 12 picks of who would win the title right now, I think we could do it. We each get 12. You say the champion. We'll do that. Maybe we can do this next week because it might be a little bit lighter week. We each have to take 12 teams, and the champion has to be in that list of 12. I think we can do it. Now, it's not the same as the top 12 for the AP pool, but if you're saying 12 teams versus the field in a certain sense of this is the top 12 teams, then I think we could do it. So one of those skewed stats that maybe we'll
unless it's which when was the last time something like this happened? But an NC State 83, or I guess the 2014 the UConn UK year. Other than that, it makes sense. If you gave us I would just take the top 12 betting favorites right now and probably feel pretty comfortable that I'm gonna get it.
Yeah. I think we could narrow down. We could pick a champion pretty easily. But Greg, we'll move on here because we got some more to get to. Just to kind of recap the rest of Saturday, we're not going to recap these games in a large way, but just really shortly, Memphis beats Clemson in overtime, 87-82. Tyrese Hunter had a big game with 23 points there. We had Alabama beating Creighton, 83-75. We had Auburn smashing Ohio State, 91-53. And I believe there's one more score. I guess Oklahoma beat Oklahoma State in Bedlam, 80-65. Wisconsin beat Butler, 83-74. UCLA in a game that Greg realized that was not a conference game. UCLA beats Arizona 57-54 in Phoenix. And then under the radar game, Mississippi State beats McNeese State 66-63. I know McNeese was kind of a darling of a lot of people of a smaller conference team. We talked about them a very, very little bit in our preseason preview, but they are 5-5, so a lot to figure out there. That's going to lead us into our picks for this week, Greg. It is... Sorry, you got something else?
Wasn't there a game this week where somebody I thought a power conference team was up big on... Am I thinking of Arkansas State last week against Memphis? Is that what I'm thinking of?
I think so.
Okay. Move on then.
All right, move on. That'll take us to this week. Again, it's not the biggest week of college basketball. We just had the big Saturday. We have a lot of teams doing holiday breaks or maybe finishing up semesters and all that. So we will get to a couple picks here. Greg, we're going to start it off with Florida and North Carolina. This one is a neutral site game. Greg, let's look at this kind of matchup pretty fairly. North Carolina's kind of struggled this year at 6-4. Florida is undefeated, but maybe not the most battle tested as other teams, and that's why they're ranked 7th and not 1st, like Tennessee, who is also undefeated.
I don't have a baseball bat, so I'm going to use a comb. Just pretend I'm Babe Ruth. Call him a shot.
Okay.
Florida loses to Carolina. Games in Charlotte. Look at Carolina's loss. Just like take a quick second and look at North Carolina's losses. Okay, so we've got it was so they lost now of course I had this pulled up and then I closed it for some reason. Here we go. All right. So 4 losses and they are Kansas at Fog Allen, Auburn in Maui, and Auburn basically ran away with that. Michigan State, all right, also in Maui. The day after they lost to Auburn, and I'm sure that game was no fun. And then Bama, yes, at home, but still it's Bama. Like that's like pick. I guess the worst loss is probably like Michigan State in Maui. Okay, so I just did a little researching today, and I didn't like do anything deep. Florida's net strength of schedule, like the strength of schedule according to the net, 260. Their best win is the Arizona State win. Granted, it was, it was at Arizona State, and they pummeled them this weekend. Pummeled them. It was bad. Carolina's is their 10th in net strength of schedule. So they've taken their lumps. They don't have like a marquee win. Like their best win right now is probably UD, a game they were down 18 in. I still, am a fan of, not a fan of, but I still believe in RJ Davis. This game is as close to a home game as you can get. He can go off. Seth Trimble could go off. There's, in a team like Florida that, as you already said, hasn't seen a lot this year. They've seen some, but not a lot. Pretty weak schedule up to this point. Not going to be a true road game, but I'll call my shot. I'll say this is not necessarily akin to the Penn State over Purdue, where it was like, hey, I'm just picking something out of it. Like, I feel like Purdue's going to lose a road Big Ten game. This is like I actually kind of have a sense of what I feel about Carolina versus what Florida really has not been through as of yet. That's kind of where what brought me to this. I'm not just picking this like be showy or get clicks or whatever. I actually think they're going to win this game. I would not. When the money line comes out, I'm going to bet on Carolina. I have to think at this point, even in a neutral site, Florida's probably going to be the favorite going into this game, right? Just
yep.
People betting are just going to look at the number next to the name and be like, yeah, Florida and Carolina's down, and I'll put my money on Carolina. I'll look right now and see if the line. I know it's tomorrow. FanDuel might have it out. I'll look it up right now while you give me your thoughts.
I got you. On OddsShark, it opened at 2.5 point favorites for Florida and 3 points right now for Florida, or 3.5 depending on the book. It kind of has different odds there. But Greg, if you ever pull out calling your shot for a 3-point underdog to win a game again, I will slap you in the face. That is that is disrespectful to Babe Ruth.
Excuse me,
Babe Ruth. Oh God.
Last week you said, "No, Greg, you called a top 10 team losing to so now you're backtracking and you're saying." Oh no, Greg!
No, that's not.
You can't do that. Oh no! Now
you have to.
Double talk.
No, it's not double talk. I think there's a difference between hey, I think this team's gonna lose. I'm gonna pick this one, and calling your shot like Babe Ruth. I think if you call a shot like Babe Ruth, it has to be for like a double-digit seed to make the Final Four or something. I don't think we can do it this way. That's taking iconic sports memory. All right, let's get to my stuff here.
4.5 points on FanDuel right now.
If it goes up to 5.5, you might be calling your shot like Babe Ruth. You might be taking your shirt off and running around, and I don't know what's going to happen. I disagree with you on UNC. I think the losses are all good, but I don't know how I feel about Michigan State loss. I think that's still up in the air. I don't really know how much I feel about them. Their best win is Dayton. Credit to Dayton. Dayton's been good. Their other wins are pretty bad. I have serious concerns about the interior play for North Carolina. It has been very, very bad. And I'm not sure it's getting much better this year. Jalen Withers, Van Allen Lubin, they're not playing well. I think Florida has the guard play to keep up with North Carolina. Walter Clayton is scoring more points per game than RJ Davis is. He has 19.1 points per game. Florida has one of the best rebounding margin teams in the country. So when you have the guards maybe playing somewhat even, Walter Clayton, Elijah Martin going up against RJ Davis, Elliot Cadeau, Seth Trimble, I think that the difference will be in the post. And I actually kind of think Florida can dominate there. Alex Condon, 12.5 points per game, 7 rebounds. With that rebounding margin, I think I'm going Florida here. I know that's, Greg will probably end up being right, but I think my reasonings are solid in the sense that they have a clear advantage in the post, and I don't think their guard play is much worse. And there's an argument to be made that they might be better guard play all around if you take more than just RJ Davis. So I'm going Florida. They are the favorites.
I'm just happy we disagree.
That's good.
That's what I like. Like I feel like most of this year it's been like if you look up and down our picks, it's like we just agree on everything. I'm like that.
Yeah.
And then we end up wrong. We've ended up wrong so much this year just because of all the crazy things that have happened. But what do you think? You want to do a shirt bet? If Florida loses, you have to wear a Florida shirt.
No.
You would love that, wouldn't you?
No, because Greg's not attached to any rivalry, so I can't make him wear a college basketball shirt that'll make him mad because he cheers for Xavier and Dayton, and that's not a slight. He married into it. I'm not slighting him. But if you're going to cheer for each other's rivals, then there's nothing I can do to make you. I don't know what shirt I can make you wear that's going to make you cry or make you feel bad. So I'm gonna pass on the bet. That's going to make me much more sick to my stomach than it will you. But I'm with you. I'm glad we disagree on that one. I'm glad. And again, you probably end up being right. Greg has a knack for that. But let's move on to Wednesday's game, Greg. We have Oklahoma and Michigan. This one I think is interesting because it's teams that we didn't expect to be as good as they are this season's kind of stepping up. And to me, that makes it more fun. I'm sure it does to you as well. This one is in North Carolina, so it's the neutral site game for this one as well. So Oklahoma's 10-0, 14th in the country. Michigan's 8-2, 24th in the country.
I don't know about you, but I have zero pulse on this game. I don't know where I want to go with it. I don't know what I want to do with it. I'm literally I spent this afternoon trying to logic think myself into who do I want to pick, and I'm literally checking our picks right now because I can't even remember. That's how little idea I have of who I think is going to win this game. I picked Oklahoma. I'm not changing it. I'm just gonna stick with that. I don't know what to think of either of these teams right now. I mean, again, it's just Oklahoma's undefeated at this point, but we could definitely look up and they get into the SEC and they get mauled and no fault of their own. It's just the SEC is a monster. Michigan, first year Dusty May. I mean, that's the main factor, I think. Better coaching, so they're a little bit better than they were last year. But I still not a Michigan believer. I know they dropped 8 or 9 spots in the poll this week, so this will be a ranked on ranked matchup, but barely. They barely hung on to their. I think they're 22 or 23. I don't have it in front of me right now, but I just this is one that it's not I think there were games in the past where this year where we've been picking, I've been oh, pass. I just like both teams and I don't want to pick between. This is not one of those situations. I just don't. I don't have any sense of what I think of either of these teams yet. Decided to watch the game because maybe I'll be able to glean something from one or both of these teams that gives me a direction. But I've seen bits and pieces of both of these teams play this year, and I just don't have a sense for where I want to go with them. Going with Oklahoma, but not much.
Yeah, I'm going Michigan. I've mentioned before I like this team this year more than I think most people do. Danny Wolf is awesome. If you have not watched him play, he's a 7-footer who runs the pick and roll with Vlad Golden. It's amazing. He's a great passer. He's I think he had 6 assists in the game last week. Was it against Arkansas maybe? And that was a career high, and they're just letting him kind of run the offense. Was always a good rebounder. could stretch the floor a little bit. He's only shooting 29% from three this year. But I love that matchup. I love Dusty May. They have guards that I think are solid. They're not the greatest guards, but they're good enough if Danny Wolf can kind of lead this thing, and Roddy Gale. They have Trey Donaldson. They have Namari Burnett. So they have decent pieces, and if Danny Wolf is kind of the focal point, which he kind of has been, it is so much fun to watch. Oklahoma is a two-man team. Jalen Moore, Jeremiah Fears. If you can shut down maybe one of them and you make them look for different guys to score, and maybe run the other guys off the three-point line a little bit, you can win. I am not impressed with their wins so far this year either. Talk about how they did well in the battle for Atlantis. Look back at those wins now. I mean, you're looking at Providence. Oh boy, that doesn't look good. And that was Providence without Bryce Hopkins too.
Yeah, Bryce Hopkins, yep.
Arizona, not looking good, and then Louisville. So undefeated, best win. I don't even know, like Oklahoma State, Louisville. I have no idea what the best win is. So I'm going Michigan to win this one. I will say the line will probably come out maybe about even, but I think it'll be a fun one. Glad we're disagreeing on another one, Greg. Let's move on to Friday, a game you'll be at attendance for. I'll be keeping tabs during the college football playoff game, but not closely watching because the college football playoff has a little bit more importance. But here you go, Greg. Cincinnati, Dayton. This is, as you said, in Cincinnati.
I think there's something much more important going on that day.
What's that?
What are you celebrating that day?
Well, we're celebrating. Festivus is on the 23rd, but we celebrate that. Yeah. So we're watching the college football playoff, and I'll be sure to rewatch this game because it does have my interest as two teams that I don't know how I feel about them all the way yet, I guess is a good way to put it. So in Cincinnati, but if you have like more of a neutral site atmosphere, it's like a short, 45-minute bus ride for Dayton. A lot of other fans will be coming down. How are you feeling, Greg? This is a big game for you guys.
We disagree on this every year, but seeing this game every year keeps making me question why Dayton and Xavier don't just play every year. I know you say it's not necessarily worth it to Xavier, but I don't know. Whatever. This game, I don't think Dayton's going to be 4 of 19 from 3 for a second straight game. I would not be surprised if they just light it up. I'll take them on that alone. I think Aziz Bandaogo is going to cause some issues inside for Dayton. But I think the 3-point shooting, and I say this now, but I said it last week, and they beat Marquette without it. I think it's going to be there. I can't see this team shooting that poorly again, and I don't like watching the Xavier game, the crosstown shootout this weekend. I'm not terrified of UC's perimeter defense, where I think they're gonna. The thing is like there's several guys that can do it. Yeah, of course they miss Kobe Brea, but like Enoch Cheeks can shoot threes, Javon Bennett can shoot threes, Nate Santos can shoot threes. I mean, like there's, and Laton can even get out from the basket a little bit, but there's just multiple ways that they can get that perimeter game going. I will be interested to see how much of an interior game they're able to put together. They might not be outsized in terms of height, but I think that's where UC has the advantage in this game, so that could turn out to be the key. But they tremendously outright. I think I forgot to mention it when we were talking. They wildly out rebounded Marquette. It was like 37-23, and it's because these guards like Enoch Cheeks and company, like they rebound tenaciously. I mean, they kind of have to make up for some of the lack of the interior presence that they have. But I'll take Dayton, like not being a homer. I can't see them struggling to shoot the ball that much 2 games in a row. Well, it won't be. They'll have a game in between. So call me on Wednesday, and if they go like 14 of 16 from 3 on Tuesday, I'll change my pick to UC. No, I'll keep it Dayton.
I'm going to go Cincinnati in this one. I think in the same way you're just saying Dayton can't shoot as bad as they did, UC did not shoot well in that Xavier game. And I think their experience dealing with that physical nature of Xavier and that physical game might prepare them and maybe limit the amount of turnovers they would have going up against Dayton, as you mentioned, with some guys who can take the ball away. I really think the X factor comes down to Dylan Mitchell, a guy who I think has been undervalued his whole college career, whether at Texas or now at UC. 11.8 points, 7.4 rebounds a game. He's a guy who's going to stop the Dayton guards from getting on the boards. He's the guy who's going to run in transition, get baskets. He's the one who's going to protect the rim, even as a guy who's not necessarily a center, but you could see him like defending in transition. Only 0.4 blocks per game, but if you watch him play, he definitely affects some shots with his athleticism. So yes, you have some of the guys that are going to get the headlines. You have Lukosius, you have Jizzle James, but I think Dylan Mitchell is the X factor here. I'm not sure Dayton has anyone athletically that can kind of match up with him. And if he can kind of help that UC defense maybe cause some issues, or help Dayton's defense cause UC's offense some issues, I think that might be the difference. Two teams, again, I'm not sure how I feel. It could go either way. I'm not 100% confident in this one, but I do really like Dylan Mitchell and how he brings something different to the table here. All right, let's move on to Saturday, Greg. We have a couple good games. Again, these will be going on during college football playoff games if you're a college football fan, but still fun to watch nonetheless, especially if some of these college football playoff games end up being blowouts, which they might. But let's start off with Purdue and Auburn. This one is in Birmingham, Alabama, a game that I think, I would have thought maybe preseason, maybe we'd have teams that are like, a little bit closer in record. Purdue has those 3 losses. Auburn only has 1, but still should be a good game nonetheless.
Yeah, I heard today on one of the other podcasts I listened to, I think last year Purdue took their 3rd loss in like February, and now they have 3 losses, and I unfortunately think they're taking a 4th loss this weekend, and it's going to be to Auburn. I don't know, especially after, watching that Texas A&M game this weekend where it was in a friendly crowd. Like, I'm just not sure what I try to like imagine and picture what it looks like for them to win this game, and like I can't come up with anything, which of course means Purdue is for sure winning this game. Go bet your house on it. You know it's happening, because just when you think you got the sport figured out this year, you don't. I'm still going to pick Auburn.
Yeah, Auburn for me too. Not feeling Purdue right now. I think that's going to be something they have to work on, the turnovers and where do they get key buckets from? Can you trust Braden Smith and Fletcher Loyer to get the job done? Can Miles Colvin have more of a role? A lot of questions to be answered there. And I think Bruce Pearl has his team ready to play. They'll be physical. They'll be able to force some turnovers themselves. And we've seen some pretty good shooting performances out of a lot of these guys on Auburn already. Quick note, Miles Kelly, they said, is going to be okay. He kind of, over the weekend, had a little bit of an issue after their game or during their game. So that also plays a factor in this. So I will say I'm going Auburn as well. The last one we're going to do, UCLA, North Carolina. This is the CBS Sports Classic. Sorry, not the Champions Classic. There's a lot of different classics, as we mentioned last week. This is part of the every year. It's Ohio State, Kentucky, UCLA, and UNC. We're not going to pick the Kentucky-Ohio State game because I think we're both going Kentucky in that one. But UCLA, North Carolina. UCLA playing better than expected. North Carolina obviously had their little bumps in the road that we talked about earlier, Greg.
It's going to be a big week for North Carolina, according to Greg, because I'm picking them to win this game, too. So that, for the record, means I'm picking them to beat Florida and Charlotte and then go to MSG and beat UCLA, who's been playing better lately. That is a tall task, a tall ask, but I am picking it and holding my breath.
Yeah, I think the reason I am picking UNC in this one is I think their offense is a lot better than UCLA's. UCLA's leading scorer, 13.7 per game. I think that their North Carolina's team athleticism is better. I think their scoring is better. I think they're going to be tough to keep up with. We've always talked about Mick Cronin teams having trouble offensively, other than those couple Final Four teams where he had a good recruiting class and some transfers to John Juzang too. But I think the offense might be an issue. And just kind of looking at what they've done this year, like, yeah, we can sit here. I know in the other game talk about how I didn't like UNC's season so far. UCLA lost to New Mexico. I'm still up in the air about how I feel about New Mexico. Their big win so far is Oregon. I'm not sure how good Oregon is. I mean, that's just a lot of up in the air for me. So I'm going UNC. I think they're the more battle tested. I think they have the better players. I think they're going to win. All right, Greg, any final thoughts for the week?
Just a couple of quick hits, games we didn't pick, but we probably wouldn't have picked even in a not light week. I know we had talked about Memphis has got some big games coming up. They play Mississippi State this week. I can't remember what day of the week that is. There's some other watchable games. There's a couple rivalry games like Washington State plays Washington. Sneaky game, SLU Grand Canyon could be fun to watch if you're a junkie like myself and Joe. Games we didn't pick because both of us were on the same page with them. Big week for Xavier. Got UConn and they got Marquette. And I'll tell you right now, if they win both of those games, we are opening the next show with that.
Yeah.
They're not going to, but like I can't imagine anything like being bigger than that. Coming off the loss to UC and the injuries and everything. Like if Sean Miller figures out a masterful way to win those two games, we are absolutely opening the next show with them, but we won't. I'm not really worried about it. Well, I'm worried about it because it's my school, but no, I don't think that's going to happen.
Yeah, the only one we disagree on that we didn't pick, I think, is Mississippi State, Memphis. I have Mississippi State, you have Memphis. So we'll see how that one plays out. I mean, we could sit here and analyze it, but I think a lot of it's going to come down to we don't know either of these teams a lot yet because Memphis has been up and down, and the Penny Hardaway situation always seems to be up and down, and Mississippi State hasn't played the toughest schedule yet, and like they didn't look their best against McNeese State. So glad you brought that game up, and we can note to the audience that we are on separate sides there. Go Josh Hubbard. Hope you get the win there. My turn to remind everyone to like and subscribe to the podcast wherever you're getting this, whether it's Apple, Spotify, or Spreaker, or any other podcast platform, and to like and subscribe on YouTube. We'll keep on coming at you throughout the rest of the college basketball season. For now, thanks for watching. We'll see you guys next time.